This presentation is an adaptation of a talk that I had given at the UN Rotary Club World Peace Conference last month. And the idea is to really just give you a big picture of what the Khan Academy is what it is. This is what most people associated with it, or I guess what's gotten the most notoriety. We have 800 videos, and for the most part, it's mathematics, but it really covers mathematics, finance, economics. Has a good section on physics, and the genesis of this. Well, I joke that I should dedicate this to my wife's residency because there were a lot of weekends where she was working all night, and I really felt guilty doing anything but recording maybe math videos or possibly cleaning the house or cooking dinner. But the genesis of this, well, I mean, that definitely did enable it, and so it's not really that much of a joke. But the genesis of this was me tutoring my cousin Nadia when she came and visited me after my wedding. This was in the summer of '04. She was exiting sixth grade. She was entering into middle school, and the middle school placement test, they put her in kind of the, they put her in, I guess you call it the remedial math class. And, we all know that if you get put into the remedial math class at an early age, that, they track you and then you'll never end up in algebra. And then, it's pretty much at sixth grade that they're deciding your fate, and you'll never end up, becoming a doctor or an engineer. Not that you have to, but they essentially shut your doors down very quickly. And she was hardworking. She's a smart girl. When I talked to her, she was more mature than most people her age. So I said, Nadia, if you're willing, I'm willing to work with you every day after I come home from work. I'm from New Orleans. She lived in New Orleans. They were visiting me in Boston at the time. And she agreed. So every day I would come home from work, we would get on Yahoo Doodle, and we'd have a screen that looked something like this, although this is a screenshot of a Khan Academy actual video. But and we both had tablet. I got her a little little tablet thing that she could draw with, and we would draw, and we would have a conference call. We would have a tutoring session for about an hour a day, and the first month was kind of difficult. She was so demoralized by math and math classes, but after a little work, she really got excited about it. And anyone who's tutoring their own kids, my one recommendation is don't just tutor so that someone catches up or so that they're barely staying with their math class. Tutor someone so that they catch up and that they actually start learning ahead of their math class, because then it just really changes one's whole self-perception. And I can't emphasize enough how important self-perception actually is, especially in things like in mathematics. But anyway, she did really well, and I started tutoring her brothers, Armand and Ali, and then other family friends. And then just the coordination became difficult. I wanted them to do problems that I could track what they were doing. So that's where the web app came into effect. So I'll talk more about that later. But to make a long story short, I started putting up videos on YouTube and said, with Nadia I could do it live, but then, for the next 5 kids who wanted to learn linear equations, I would just make a linear equations video. And I kept doing that, and just on a whim, I made it public, and a bunch of kids just started watching. At first I'd put a video up and I'd get excited that 20 kids would watch a video, and then obviously things have picked up beyond that, and it really seems like I kind of struck a chord. And on a lot of levels, I'd like to take credit for it all, but to some degree, a lot of this happened by chance. YouTube initially, before I was a partner, had a 10-minute limit on my videos. And in hindsight, that was actually kind of the most digestible nugget of knowledge that you could take. We've all sat in 90-minute lectures, and you really can't pay attention for more than 10 minutes at a time without a break. And 10 minutes really is the perfect amount of time to digest one concept, and it just becomes really high value for everyone involved. But anyway, I started putting things on YouTube. Kids all over the world started watching it. It slowly started growing. I mean, now it's been growing quite rapidly. If you look at this chart, this is actually the viewership. It's been growing, I estimated, about 20% a month. This little spike right here, we're now at close to 20,000 viewers. This spike right here is whoops, I'm using the right tool. Let me change my pen color to yellow, just because I'm bored of the blue. So this spike right here, that is a video I did on the Geithner plan that on essentially how the banks could use it to game the system, and that kind of went pseudo-viral. So that really peaked my viewership at 30,000 views. But and actually, that's an interesting. I mean, a lot of people. You started with Nadia and her problem with school. How did I end up doing finance and economics? Well, my day job is I'm a research analyst, and I essentially invest money, and I pay close tabs on the economy for a living, and I'd go to the parties and people would ask me about the credit crisis and the economy and the housing market, and I said, you know what? I'll also make videos for you, and so that's how that started. But that's where this peak came in. It's just interesting to analyze where everything came in from. But we're averaging about 20,000. It's growing really fast, and we're already about 10 times the viewership we were a year ago, and hopefully we'll be at 200,000 views per day a year from now. And I think it's just a matter of awareness, because we haven't done any advertising or anything, just because it's just me. Anyway, and so a lot of people say, where are you going with this? Right now we already cover, this is pretty much all of K through 12. I have to build a little bit more on kind of I would say the K through 4th grade concepts, but really everything that's covered in high school mathematics is covered on the Khan Academy already. And on my to-do list, I have to build out the statistics playlist, but I want to do chemistry and biology. But the eventual goal is to do literally everything. I'm doing these because I think this is where there's a lot of high value, and a lot of people are struggling with these, even though I'd argue that hopefully they shouldn't have to. But eventually I want to cover grammar and philosophy and the law, and really build out finance or whatever. The idea is that you could get an education online for free that's of a pretty good quality. Not to harp on this slide too much, but I'd even argue that I am a better tutor on video than I am live, because no matter who you're getting tutoring instruction from, there's this notion of when it's live, there's kind of this stress, and if I ask you, do you understand it, you want to say yes, even though you really don't, because you feel bad about using up my time, and maybe people get frustrated and it shows up in their voice. But when it's a video, you can pause it, you can watch it when you have energy. You don't have to coordinate with the other people. It's it's just on your own time. You can pause it. You don't have to take notes. You don't have to say, what if I forget this before the exam? It's just a much better overall format to do instruction in. So I even family friends who I still do tutor directly, I still argue that they'll probably enjoy my videos more than they'd enjoy me. But anyway, with that said, let me go to the next slide. How do I go? Let's see, page down. No, that doesn't work. This is, I don't know. Let me see. Maybe I should just go to the cursor. Oh, there you go. It let me go. Now I'll go back to the drawing tool. And just so you know, this drawing tool was given out of the blue. One of the viewers said you need a better screen recording tool. His name is Muhammad. I don't know who he is or where, but he literally gave me this $300 application, which is it's another testament. I don't know. It's kind of it's overwhelming how many people have reached out and have been helping out and kind of making this effort work. But anyway, this slide is just kind of a subset of the comments that a lot of the viewers have made. And I do this slide, I had mixed feelings about it, because it is a little bit of self-horn tooting. But when I go to parties and they've never seen Khan Academy, and I say, hey, in my spare time I like to make videos, people kind of like, oh, well, that's nice. It's probably a nice, cute little hobby, and online videos, and what impact can it really be having? But when you read the kind of the stories that people are write on our message boards every day, I think it's pretty apparent that this is having a pretty significant impact. Most of these are really from the last week or two, and we get about 30 or 40 letters and comments a day, and and that's a subset of, I think, the people who are actually having impact. But this one, when I read stuff like this, I don't care what happens to the rest of my day. It puts you in a good mood. I really like and enjoy your videos. That's great. It's just nice to get that. But I was born with the learning disabilities, and your video has dramatically helped me understand my math. Because of your videos, I became this top student in my grade 11 university. The way he or she is saying, I guess, is video of Mike. So the way they're saying, my top student in my grade 11 university level math class, it sounds like they might be in either the United Kingdom or a former colony of it, because grade 11, we'd always say 11th grade. But anyway, that's heartwarming, and it's amazing, because who knows which videos he or she watched, but once they were done, and this required no incremental time on my part, no incremental time, no incremental expense, but he or she really got, I'd like to think, almost a life-changing benefit from from these videos. And that's another thing I'd like to point out. These videos, you know, there's a lot of blogs and videos, but there's nothing better than actual education content because it never goes old. I mean, I always joke, why are there all these textbooks that they have to republish them when, you know, calculus hasn't changed that much since Newton. So you record it once and that it lasts forever. You know, I get excited about the idea that maybe 100 years from now, my great-great-grandkids could be learning, or your great-great-grandkids could be learning calculus from me. And that's just, you know, maybe well, anyway, you know, these are the other things. You know, wow, great job. I knew I was not as senseless as the professor thought. And I want to highlight that because I think we've all felt anger at some point in our, you know, whether it was anger at ourselves or anger at the teacher or anger at the system. And frankly, you know, I've kind of, these are the censored arguments. Some of the positive feedback we get, people are kind of angry because they're angry because the system had told them that they didn't understand things, or the system had told them that, you know, they can't be an engineer or they can't be a doctor. They should just, you know, look someplace else. And then when they look at the videos, they're like, well, you know, that really wasn't that bad. And it's almost an anger at realizing where people were trying to, you know, go. You know, this is, you know, you rock. Well, thank you. Whatever comedy owns. This was 3 weeks ago. You know, without your videos, I'd be failing math in school. So once again, you know, I didn't do anything. I just recorded this. Who knows which videos he's watching? But it was a while ago. You know, these are great. I've never seen complicated topics explained so beautifully. And you know, I know this is self-horn tooting, and I feel a little awkward about it. But I want to just make this point because the whole, you know, sometimes when I talk to educators about this, they say, "What curriculum are you using?" And I say, "Well, I'm not using any curriculum. I'm explaining math as it is in my brain." And, you know, I've had the privilege in life of being able to learn math, I think, at a fairly deep level. And, you know, if I bump into a math problem in my everyday life, I have retained a lot of it. So I just explain it. You know, if I have a bunch of math neurons that are all connecting to each other, and I try to explain math as it's in my brain. And I think I've kind of stumbled on a more natural methodology, because if it really is all in one person's brain, it's not this artificial construct made by, you know, bureaucrats at some state level, or someone who made a textbook who just wanted to fill pages so that they could, you know, the textbook would weigh more and give kids hernias and they could charge more for it. It's really just, you know, a very natural expression of what do you need to know and what do you need to connect. And you know, one problem I've always had with math instruction, and this used to kind of frustrate me seeing a lot of my classmates get frustrated when I was in school, was just this notion of, you know, a lot of times they teach the same thing in 100 different ways and they make it complicated, and kids are just taught that, you know, this is very complex, but they're really teaching the same thing in 100 different ways and using 100 different words, and just and not connecting the dots for students. And that's what we're trying to do at the Khan Academy. But anyway, this is, you know, I think this gives you a good context of, you know, you explain everything as if we were 5 years old, but it's still not boring but very interesting. I think that's because I'm a little bit flippant in some of my videos. I sometimes answer the phone and talk to well, anyway, so this is, you know, let's see, this is, you know, differential equations, and and this is one thing I want to highlight, because there are other efforts that are making videos out there, and they all deserve credit. And, you know, I went to MIT, and MIT, I was especially proud the first time that they announced their open courseware project, because, you know, this was at the same time that a lot of other educational institutions, and I'll say educational in quotes, because a lot of these institutions at the time were talking about charging for the content and starting virtual schools and essentially kind of keeping the barriers to knowledge high, while MIT just went out there and said, you know what, we're just going to record all of our lectures and offer them free to the world. And, you know, I had never been more proud of my where I went to school than that day. But I think the problem, and this has a lot of value. I mean, I still look at these videos when I want a review of some of the really advanced topics that, you know, I had learned at one time. But the problem with these is these are just videos of what goes on in a standard classroom. You know, and you could talk about, you know, what the quality of lecturers. There are some great ones and some not so great ones, but it's not taking advantage of the real advantage that on-demand video really has. You know, that notion that you have this 10-minute granularity that I talk about, or the notion that you can pause and replay, or that you know, you should just be able to narrow in exactly what you don't know. MIT, it's a tremendously valuable resource, but I think it could be special purpose to be a little better. And then the other thing is, of course, it's only addressing at the university level. It doesn't really touch on K through 12, where really there's a much bigger need, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So, this is just some more. This is actually some comments from one of the actual message boards. I think this is from calculus. You've given me so much confidence, and I want to highlight that because math is all about confidence. I mean, if you think about math is just a bunch of concepts. Let me find a darker color here. Math is all about, if this is one concept, this is another concept, and that concept leads to a couple of more concepts, and those concepts lead to a couple of other concepts. And if you either get demoralized here or you just don't have 100% mastery of this concept right here, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how great a teacher you have over here, you're never going to have mastery here because math is cumulative. And the problem is in our system right now is that we expect a student who was a B+ student here to somehow be at least a B+ student here or even an A student here. While, if they were a B+ student here, the rest of the time they're never going to be a B+ student. In fact, more probably they're just going to degrade over time because they're going to have these gaps in their knowledge that just become more and more pronounced as you go, further down the learning curve. And the problem is a lot of people get here. Let's say that this is algebra. And they're smart, hardworking. They have a great teacher who's, everything that a teacher should be. And the teacher gets frustrated, the kid gets demoralized, the kid starts thinking that he or she isn't intelligent because they're just not getting the algebra, and maybe even that, they're like, this is a good teacher and I'm still not getting it. But the problem is they would have gotten the algebra if they just understood maybe negative numbers properly. And the problem is that the student either might not be aware that they have that weakness there, or that they misunderstood something at a very early level, or they're just afraid to tell their algebra teacher that, it's not the algebra I'm having trouble with. I'm having trouble with something that I really should have learned 2, 3, 4, even 5 years ago. And I'll talk more about it. But we've been working with some groups of students where they are learning algebra, but their weaknesses were really basic. And once they got over those really basic weaknesses, they really just accelerated ahead. And these are students that a lot of people probably would have labeled as slow or not good at math, but once they got over those basic weaknesses, they were really as good as anybody. And this is actually one of my favorite comments, and I think this kind of says it all in terms of self-confidence. I actually got a natural high and a good mood for the entire day, since I remember seeing all of this matrix text. So I'm assuming, we've all sat in a math class where you see stuff on the board and you're just like, well, I don't know what that is. Matrix text in class, and here I'm all like, I know Kung Fu. It's tremendously empowering when you actually get something. And I fundamentally believe that everyone loves learning. They just don't like being frustrated. They don't like being talked down to, and they don't like being told that they're not as smart or being demoralized. This is this is another value of the videos. It's just the notion of homeschooling. And so this oh, whoops, I thought I was using a different tool. So let me see if I can. Oh, no, I didn't want to do it that dark. But anyway, that serves a purpose. So this is a letter from a homeschooler, and that's another value I think of the videos. But I use video teaching whenever possible. Homeschooling 3 children, a local forum where I post materials. Somehow I've never run your videos before. This was in December. I'm very familiar with an incredible number of videos. Teachers, how for your videos stand head and shoulders above all of them. That I guess that's horn tooting, but I thank you. You speak so clear. Whatever. My eldest kid is dancing around the room here because she's so excited that she found someone that taught like this. And I don't want to. I feel uncomfortable. I mean, this is kind of boasting, and I apologize for that. I don't want to appear that way, but I wanted to highlight just that this is. I mean, when someone is empowered, especially in something like mathematics, I mean, they want to dance. Anyway, let me move on. So this is, it has gotten some notoriety, and I really just wanted to show this because it's, there's a couple of funny anecdotes here. CNN actually picked up on the whole Khan Academy thing because I told you already I made those videos on the credit crisis, and when the whole TARP emergency was going on, they said that people in their studio were actually watching it, I think before explaining it themselves. So they wanted me on. They had to really explain what was going on at the TARP. So I was, and their big thing, they actually wanted me to do it the way I do it on YouTube. So this is actually a screenshot from the CNN showing, so they actually had me on there, and I was in the San Francisco office, and Rick Sanchez was in Atlanta. But it was fun, and hopefully it was instructive to some. And actually, it ended up writing a paper with a Berkeley professor who thought that our idea to start new banks was probably the best one. So if you're interested, there's that paper out there. This is an article that came out in Italy, apparently in the biggest paper in Milan, and the author, apparently the journalist, he reassured me that there was a huge following of the Khan Academy in Italy, which was a little bit surprising. I do track where it's being watched, and it seems like it's mainly in the English-speaking world, former British colonies. I'd say it's popular in the U.S. and the U.K. and India and Australia, but I guess the Italians. I obviously don't do them in Italian, so that's just a neat thing. I actually haven't read this. This might say that this guy's the biggest loser on earth, but the journalist seemed like a nice guy, so I'm assuming that they didn't ruin my reputation in Italy. But anyway, this showed up in USA Today. The journalist had told me that they knew a lot of kids at the local college. I think she's one of them, who were kind of dependent on these videos to get through their math classes. But I just thought that was an interesting. This is something that I had thought about this when first making the web app and making the videos. That there's a value of these videos, especially. I was thinking more in terms of underprivileged areas of the U.S. I went to a public school that was, I'm familiar with kind of the broad spectrum of education. I've had the privilege of going to some of the best universities, but at the same time, I've also had the privilege of also seeing what some of the broad spectrum. I don't want to say anything bad, because obviously wherever I went to school has given me a lot of opportunities in life. But I was originally thinking that Khan Academy had a lot of value in kind of the inner city and places where they weren't able to attract the best, or not always, or always have the best teachers or people with deep subject knowledge. But this came out of the blue. This World Possible group right here. This is a group of engineers at Cisco, and they contacted me out of the blue. They're setting up these servers. They call them these Rachel servers, where they're essentially putting all of the content that they thought was necessary for a self-learner to have an education on these servers, and then taking them. They went to Ethiopia, and then taking them into villages that were not on the internet, but setting up these thin clients so that people could essentially have an education. And what they said, they put a snapshot of Wikipedia, they put the Gutenberg text projects, but they said, we want the Khan Academy because it really brings it all together. The Khan Academy videos. So I feel privileged to kind of be in the same category as Wikipedia, because I'm a big fan of it. But they were very adamant that this is kind of information, and my friend Jerry, who kind of came, he also contacted me. I didn't know him before. He kind of said, this stuff right here is information, while this right here is knowledge. And that is the idea, is that in a lot of these villages in Ethiopia, and I'll talk about Uganda in a second, even if you have the resources, and obviously resources is a huge problem, even if you do have the resources, it's tremendously difficult to find people in villages who have, not to even speak of calculus skills, or who know physics, but to even have basic algebra, pre-algebra skills. It's almost impossible. So those kids are just left stranded, even if there are the resources to provide it. And at least if you have something like the Khan Academy, you have access to, I'd like to think something close to best-in-class instruction. Uconnect.org is another organization. Let me go to the next slide. So this is the letter that literally kind of started the relationship with Uconnect. This is a letter from Lisa Stern, and since discovering your site, I've introduced thousands of people to do it. I think that your model offers the best hope for high quality education that can be given to the masses. And just so you know, this is one of those letters that after I read it to my wife, and because sometimes I have to give my wife a lot of credit, because she's put up with a lot, especially when even now our baby's crying, and I was like, I have to do a video on the normal distribution right now, and that's not an easy thing to. Well, anyway, but I read this to her, and she gets excited. But since discovering your site, I have introduced thousands of people to do it. I think your model offers the best hope for a high quality education that can that can be given to the masses. I know that there's an enormous need for inspired online teachers. I have observed, and this is the part that was really touching. I have observed students using your programs. When they listen to you, they cannot stop smiling and are ready to try things they never would have tried if it weren't for your brilliant teaching. Anyway, I know it's self-horn tooting. I'm going to stop. But this is important. But I believe that every child deserves a teacher as good as you are. So she founded with her husband this organization, uconnect.org, in 1996. So they've been operational for a while. Set up over 300 schools in Uganda. I mean, that's no joke. With computers which we connected from banks and businesses in England and Switzerland. So these are people that care about kids, care about, especially in the developing world, and they've really just bootstrapped this effort. They've actually become a pretty substantial organization in Europe now. We do everything from collecting, packing, and shipping computers. Anyway, her email went on, and the crux of it is they wanted access to Khan Academy, but they explained that a lot of these villages, this is actually Obia in Uganda, they don't have access to the network, so what could they do? And I put them in touch with the guys at Cisco, who are the World Possible people, and they gave them a Rachel server. And so this is actually, in Obia, they actually set up one of these Rachel servers from the other organization, and I believe these are the instructors or learning. I don't know if they're doing the Khan Academy right now, but this is essentially what it looks like. But they have been ramped up on the Khan Academy, and apparently the Minister of Education, who used to be a math teacher, the Minister of Education of Uganda is really excited about what's going on there. And this just, I mean, I don't know. This to me is kind of one of the coolest aspects of the Khan Academy, because it's something that I never expected, but it really shows kind of the leverage that I make. If someone makes a video on, and it's a good video on teaching a concept, it doesn't just help kids with a computer. There are these really impressive people out there that are going into the villages who can take that same content and then actually distribute it to people who really could use it. This is, so everything I've talked about right now, and I apologize, I sometimes do just, I just keep talking sometimes, but it hopefully gives you some context of where everything comes from. But everything I talked so far about was the Khan Academy video library, but the real genesis was the Khan Academy web application, and that's what this is here. It initially started literally with, I wanted to be able to keep track of Nadia and Arman, when they were doing problems. I wanted them to be able to do exercises, so I wrote a little JavaScript that essentially dynamically generated infinite problems, and I put a database behind it so that I could keep track of what they were doing. Then I made it so once they finished one concept, instead of having to kind of keep track of it, I made the system automatically do it, and it turned into this web application. And so this is a screenshot of it. And so, and then the videos actually became where the idea was to offer the instruction with the web application. So this is a screenshot of multiplying decimals. And so what a student, and literally this web application starts at 1 + 1 = 2, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But it'll generate a problem on the fly, so it has an infinite number of problems. If it takes a student 1,000 problems to figure out how to do something, they will get 1,000 problems. If they don't know how to do it, they can click hint right here, and every time you click hint, it tells you the next step, and it highlights everything. How do you do that next step? And if they're really like, I have no idea of how to do a problem like this, they can click watch video, and then the YouTube video pops up, and hopefully they'll have a sense of what they're doing. And the whole idea of this web app is to kind of close the loop that occurs in the standard education model, right? In the standard education model, you kind of get a lecture in the classroom. I'll talk more about it. You have to kind of, the teachers, no matter how good they are, they have to teach to kind of a common denominator. Half the kids might be lost, half the kids might be bored. Then you go home and practice in the current with homework. You don't get any feedback. You could be completely stuck, but you're stuck. There's no help there. You don't get feedback until the test, which is also your assessment. And then in the current model, it's time to go to the next concept, even if your assessment said you only got a C, and you really should just focus on that current concept. So that's the current model. What we're trying to do is kind of close this loop and allow everyone to learn at a self-paced level. So that last video, I call that the instruction video, but this is the practice. So once again, this is a more advanced concept. This is the slope of a line, and it's very visual. When you click on the hints, it actually draws, this is the rise is -7, the run is -4, and it tells you how to explain it. These pop up as you click on it. And actually, you could go, I actually have on our YouTube channel, I have where I do a live demo of this, and you could click watch video and it'll explain it. But the key point here is that you actually get feedback. It's not like you're looking in a textbook and you don't even know how to start. If you don't know how to start, you click hint. It explains it to you. It's not like a textbook where you get an answer, your answer is different than the answer the textbook has. There's no context for where you went wrong. There's nothing you can do. And actually, this is a streak. It's a little video game. It's actually amazing how many kids actually get addicted to this energy points. But you can give feedback to the system, and the system uses that on analytics. This is your streak. But this is your practice and feedback, and it really all happens at the same time. And then finally, we do assessment. We're tracking, you saw those last few screens, kids are doing problems, and the system is tracking everything. And I'll in the next slide, I'll show you how granular the tracking is. But this slide, I think, really, I've probably taken up too much of your time already, but this is the one I really want to focus in because it highlights, I think, a lot of the pitfalls of the current education system and the power of self-paced adaptive learning can have. So the Khan Academy was used as essentially the core math curriculum for the Peninsula Bridge, which was a summer program for underprivileged, mainly Latino and African American students in the Bay Area. And so this is the data from one of the sites. So just so you understand, this is the day's progression in the summer camp that they did this for 6 weeks, and this is the number of modules they completed. And just so you have a sense, these first few modules right here, these are like 1 + 1 = 2. Up here, it's like decimals and things. These are things like negative numbers. So as you get more and more advanced, this getting up here, this is like trigonometry. This is basic addition, right? So we're plotting in this graph the class's progression as they went through. And this black line right here, this is the average of the class. So the average student in the class, they're all working at their own pace. And it's interesting, you can see that they all advanced really quickly right here and fairly quickly here, but then they all, the rate, the advance was really fast here, and then the rate was something slower over here. And the sense is, and there's a lot of data that bears this out, is that this is when they were kind of reviewing. And this is when they were looking at new concepts or concepts that it was a little bit more substantive than a review. They really needed a slightly deeper understanding. But more important than that, just so you have a sense, these little green lines above and beyond, these are 1 standard deviation above. And I have videos on the standard deviation if you forgot where that came from. What is it? But standard deviation is kind of the average distance from the average, right? So this is 1 standard deviation below. And I want to highlight a couple of students. This is Karina. And after 5 days into the program, she was already 1 standard deviation, more than 1 standard deviation below the average student in the class. So if Karina was unlucky enough that there was just an assessment test that day, you would have said Karina is below average, and if a student was here, you said they were above average. Maybe Karina, like my cousin Nadia, she should be tracked into kind of a slower class and all of that. And then, these kids up here, they should be put into a gifted class or whatever. These are the kids that are meant to be physicists. These are the kids that are meant to be, I don't know, a receptionist, and they make all these judgments. And these judgments do matter. I mean, we all know that they affect the rest of your life, especially the things that happen in middle school and high school. But what was powerful here is in a traditional model, Karina would have been tracked, and she would have always had this weakness, whatever this concept was here. But then once she got that concept, she was allowed to learn at her own pace. Her learning just accelerated. Then the next concept, she just went straight through, and she actually finished the class as one of the top students. This is only a period of 6 weeks. Who knows what might happen in a period of 6 months or 6 years? But she actually finished over 1 standard deviation above the average. And actually, Alexander, he was definitely below average starting off. So he once again would have been tracked on kind of a remedial class. But he was actually the top performing student in the class by the end of the session. And this also highlights, I think, a problem. No matter how good of a teacher you want to be or you can be, when you do the traditional learning model, you kind of always have to. I'm playing with my pen tool right now. You always have to kind of teach to the norm. If this was a lecture right now, you would always have to be kind of teaching at this pace, right? Whatever this pace is. And when you teach at this pace, let me change the colors. When you teach at this pace, all the people who could be learning all this stuff up here, they're bored. And all of these people down here, they're completely lost and they're getting no benefit of it. So to a large degree, at any given moment of time, there's only a small subset of people that the lecture, no matter how good of a teacher you are, in no way am I trying to say that, I mean, this would be my problem. If I was in a classroom and I had to give a lecture to 30 kids, probably 10 would be bored, 10 would be lost, and maybe 10 would in and out become vaguely interested in what I was doing, or maybe just because the pace was so slow they would kind of switch between these two things. And the irony is you can be bored in one thing and then the next thing you'll be lost. So the class was going too slow for you and then the class goes too fast, and that's a shame because you could have learned this real fast and then spent more time on that right there. And just to hit the point home, this is the actual data. So we analyzed where Karina actually had a problem. So it actually turns out that it was adding and subtracting negative numbers was where she had a problem. And this is just gives you an idea of the granularity we keep track of. This is the first problem she did right now, did in the system on adding and subtracting negative numbers. It took her about 33 seconds. Red means she got it wrong. So she got a bunch of problems wrong. This took her a long time. This is when she watched the video. We kept track of that. And then after she watched the videos, we see that she got a lot better. It took her less time. She got a lot more right. Blue means you did the problem right. She got a couple wrong, but then she was getting the idea. I mean, maybe this was a special case she didn't quite get, but then she got 10 in a row, and that's how we define proficiency. You get 10 in a row. This is actually a histogram of actually, the distribution of how long it takes. And we do keep track of that too, because it is important to just keep track of how long someone takes relative to the norm. But just going back to Karina, she had problem with that. She was able to take a little bit more time on that than what other students took. But once she did that, she raced forward, like I said. And then this concept right here, level 3 linear equations, that's like, minus 3x plus 7 is equal to x minus 2x minus 8. So this is a fairly complex topic. She just raced through it. She just got it. It was easy for her. I mean, you see a student like this. This kid is meant to be an astrophysicist. This kid that back here, you would have said, maybe you should be a receptionist or something one day. Not to say that a receptionist is a bad job, but I mean, she has a lot of potential, and there's millions of kids like this all around the world who are getting lost in the system, either because they're not getting access to good instruction, or even with excellent instruction, it's not being paced with them. And if they just get assessed at the wrong time, they're kind of told that they're not intelligent. But if they get assessed at the right time, people realize that these really are brilliant kids. So this is a big picture of just kind of the curriculum we're doing. I spoke in the, before that a lot of people say, what is your curriculum? And I just do essentially, I think what is, how math makes sense to me. And every student will start here at, let me use the pen tool, at basic addition. This is literally 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. As you get those right, it moves you to the next concept. So this right here would be like, 7 plus 8, so you'll get like a 2-digit answer, and then so this will be like 15 plus 9. So it incrementally makes things slightly more difficult. And once you know basic addition, then you're ready for stuff like 2 minus 1, and that's basic subtraction. So it's very granular in the concept, and it's really making sure that you understand that exact concept. It's funny, I had a friend who was advising, I think he was advising people who are on the White House panel for education curriculum, and they get a bunch of academics together and they'll talk about, and at grade 7, because of, people should learn this concept, this concept, this concept, this concept. And he said, you should have a node-directed graph like this, because math, or really any learning, isn't linear like this. One concept can lead to a bunch of other concepts, and it really shouldn't just be a kind of a linear progression dependent on someone's age or what grade they're on. It should be kind of this 2-dimensional graph based on whether people have proficiency in a concept. And so, once you know adding, multiplying and dividing negative numbers, then you're ready to do fractions. You're ready to do exponents. Once you do basic exponents, then you're ready for geometry and level 2 exponents. You needed exponents for geometry because, pi r squared. So that's why you needed r squared. That's an exponent. So that's why you needed to have mastery of this first. I mean, you can imagine if you went to geometry class, you have a great geometry teacher, and she says that the area of a circle is pi r squared, but you really didn't understand exponents well, you're just going to be lost, no matter how good the teacher is. And the geometry teacher, often they don't have the time, or it's just not obvious to them that the weakness is in not in the understanding the formula, but in understanding the actual mechanics of the formula. But anyway, this is our knowledge map. Our goal is really to just keep on going. I mean, I eventually want branches that go into philosophy and law. I mean, we already have stuff that are touching on physics. It goes it's going close to calculus now. Our video library is much deeper. It goes into things that are well into kind of a quantitative engineering course load. I mean, it starts up out here, but it goes into fairly deep concepts in economics and finance and all the rest. But our goal is that our knowledge map and the web module also does the same eventually. And we actually want to create this into an open platform. Actually, I'll do that in the next video. This Q-brary is, a lot of people, the perception is at Khan Academy it's mainly math and science, and that's what it is right now, because I think that is where the biggest need is, and that is, in my opinion, what really does empower people, or where a lot of people get demoralized the most. But this right here is a screenshot of something I'm working on right now called the Q-brary, and it's essentially to create kind of a worldwide study group where I have my account and I can create questions. It's kind of a questionopedia where, essentially I create a flashcard where I can create a question. Let's say, I'm in AP American History. I pick the category. This is the screen where I'm actually creating the question and the choices. And I categorize it within the AP American History syllabus, and then someone else later on, if they want to learn about AP American History, and I don't have to be a student, I could be a teacher writing questions, they'll see the question and it'll ask them the question, and then you rate it. And the idea here is that obviously some people are going to write great questions, some people are going to write not so great questions. But when you have enough users and enough questions in the database, people will rate the questions by difficulty, importance, and quality. And then the good questions will surface to the top. And it really doesn't take much to have a really valuable database of questions in really any topic. I mean, this is history. We could do it in biology, chemistry, and it's really trivial to add new concepts there. So this is, just I gave some of the, I guess you could call them, some of the letters from people who, benefited, and it's been kind of overwhelming for me and very moving for me to see the impact from the video library. But this is a letter I got literally just yesterday morning from a student who used the web app, and I want to read out the whole thing because it's just, Sal, I just wanted to personally thank you for everything you've done. I'm 23, and this letter encapsulates, I think, a lot of what Khan Academy is all about. I'm 23, I was homeschooled poorly, I might add, so I never had a great education, and I've jumped from awful job to awful job since I graduated, in quotes, at 17. And I think a lot of us graduate, in quotes, right? I've always wanted to go to school for electrical engineering, but never thought it was possible. I decided to give it a shot anyway and started studying for my ACTs about a month ago. After numerous confusing books, I was almost ready to give up until I stumbled upon one of your videos on YouTube. From there, I went to your website and started the adaptive math program. In the past 2 weeks, I've made it all the way up to limits of a function, which is it doesn't go a lot farther. He's pretty much almost done. And he says, and we'll soon be done with the entire program. I signed up to take my ACTs on June 13th and decided to take a full timed practice test last night, and I scored a 25. That's quite a good score in the ACT. I don't know what percentile that is, but it's in the 80th or 90th percentile. The score required for admission to CSUs, I don't know, this is Colorado State, I don't know. Engineering program is 23, so he already made the cut for that. I never thought that was possible, and I still have almost 2 months to continue studying. Just wanted to again thank you for your help. You're an inspiration, Ryan Monteleon. I mean, this is what it's about. What did it take me? This was the incremental cost to society was 0, right? He might have been doing this while I was sleeping. The video is already out there. But the incremental benefit, I mean, obviously to him it's a huge incremental benefit, but even to society, the incremental benefit, I have no doubt Ryan will become an electrical engineer, and at a minimum, he's going to design great products and make the next generation of computers and electronics, and maybe he'll invent, the next generation transistor, or go to Intel and make processors sentient, or, hopefully we won't be controlled by computers. And well, anyway, I don't want to go too far off, but I mean, this is what gets me excited, and it reminds me the leverage of this model is if you really do have this kind of virtual infrastructure, this virtual education, really motivated people can, self-motivated people can go out there and educate themselves, and there's nothing that they're kind of lacking, and it's free, and it should be free because it costs us nothing. And that's why I in general have a little bit of a problem with charging for knowledge, right? And I'll do another video on the textbook industry. But anyway, let's see. That should probably be in my economics. A lot of people, where is Khan Academy going? This is, I've already talked about, this is that right there, that's the video library. And the idea with the video library is just keep going. I say I want to record videos until I get hit by a bus. I do have a day job. I need if feed my family essentially. I mean, it's, I've been privileged. I have a good day job. So, but this is my joy in life. So I do want to record these videos until, hopefully it's a long time from now, until the day I die. And it's, not only is it satisfying to get those letters like I got. I mean, it's amazing to think that people in future generations could learn from this. And there's just a part of me, I love kind of being that person that gets to go out there. Right now I'm reading books on relativity, which frankly, I learned it in school, but I want to learn it really, really, really well. And it's like a privilege. I can go and digest a bunch of books on relativity, and then I can distill it on the Khan Academy in a way that it can kind of be communicated to a lot more people. So it's just a fun thing to do, to spend a lot of your time, and it's motivating, right? It's motivating. In school, you're motivated to learn for a test, but now I'm motivated to learn new things so that I can, hopefully distill them and share them with a lot of other people. So that's the video library, and the video library is kind of linked with the web app. And the idea with the web app is to keep making modules, and the idea is to kind of create a platform here where other people can also create modules independently. So you can imagine a world 20 or 30 years from now where there's a module on every single concept. So no one who wants practice, if no one wants to learn something, there's going to be a video on it, and maybe there'll be several videos. And I also like to take a point. I don't think I'm the only person who could do this. I'm trying to find other people who could do this. I want to translate this into other languages, or have someone do these in other languages, because someone might learn well from me, but my style might not be perfect for everyone, and they could learn better from someone else. And we're keeping track of the analytics to actually see where you learn from and who's learning better from what person. So, this video library could end up being in the tens of thousands of people, and in every language. I mean, you can imagine the impact if you did it in Spanish and Arabic and Hindi and Mandarin. You'd have a huge worldwide impact. I mean, if you want to fight the war on terror, you do this in Arabic, and I guarantee you're going to have a more enlightened Muslim world, and you'll have fewer, I guess. Well, anyway, I don't want to make too much of a social statement. But anyway, we have the Q-brary. This is kind of for the things that the knowledge. We talked about information versus knowledge. This is kind of, you need to know your American history. You should know some basic facts, and this is where the Q-brary comes into play. This also works for some things like biology. Some concepts in biology, chemistry will be here, where you need to practice. Some concepts, what are the stages of mitosis, would be here. And this is something that I'm just starting to work on, and I'm trying it out with some kids. But I want to do a lot of simulation-based learning, because I think that's where you really get hands-on knowledge, especially things like market simulations, strategy simulations. It could just be game playing, a whole set of things, and we'll just keep brainstorming more and more simulations. And then this is the thing I'm really excited about, and I'm starting on this in the next few months, is to really create. These are the resources for an individual student can come, or at least these first three, an individual student can come in and get an education from the system, right? The system is the cloud, people say, is just giving them an education. But the real power is where you have students who learn the basic concepts from here, but after a while, students still need the human touch. You can't ever get rid of it. But you have all these students who have knowledge. I mean, there could be let me change the color just because I think there could be a kid in Iran who really knows his algebra, and then there could be a kid in Israel who needs help with algebra, and this kid in Iran could be a great teacher. I mean, I'm of the believer that you can improve as a teacher, but great teachers are great teachers when they're 13, and they might become a better teacher when they're 30 or 40 or 50, but they're kind of born. So this kid might be a great teacher, and he could tutor this kid in Israel the same way that I tutored Nadia, through a kind of a trusted virtual school. So they both have this infrastructure right there, and then they can kind of schedule with each other and use a kind of virtual classroom to, kids around the world are teaching to each other. And if this kid in Israel still, this kid in Iran helped him, but it's still not good enough, and he's of rank 4, maybe he can find another kid in I don't know, in England who's of rank 5 who can explain it a little bit better, and you have a rating system where there's an infinite number of free resources of people who are willing to help you out. And that doesn't just help the helpee, that helps the helper, because I'm convinced that the best way to learn something is to actually teach it. And eventually things get escalated. So if you contribute a lot to the system, then you can get more from the system, and you can get direct instruction from the senior instructors, whether it's myself or other members of the Khan Academy. So that's really where I see it all going. And and then eventually, even in these villages like Obia, Uganda, and those villages in Ethiopia, it's 5 to 10 years before they have broadband access. It's going to happen, and then everyone's going to be networked. And you can imagine. I mean, I use these countries on purpose because if you got tutoring from a kid in Iran, or the Irani kid got tutoring from a kid in Israel, when those kids become leaders, or they at least become influential in their own societies, they're not going to hate each other. So it has other repercussions above and beyond just the notion that everyone will learn, and you have this just general enlightening of society. But anyway, that's kind of I probably went longer than I wanted to, but these are where you can get the other resources, khanacademy.org, and our YouTube Khan Academy channel. And I'm very open to kind of ideas, and a lot of the videos are people send me emails and say, hey, can you do a video on statistics or this and that? And that's where they come from. So I'm very open to any feedback you might have or any ideas. And anyway, I hope you found this presentation useful.